On this week's Spark, I'm very excited because I'm joined by a longtime friend of mine, Matt Fieldman. Matt, I was thinking just the other day how long we've known each other and when I think we first met. And it was probably 18 years ago when my family moved from Miami to Cleveland. And you and Allison had Jessica and I over, and Leah and Jeff were there. And there was another couple who I don't remember. And you were doing like a young Jewish professionals thing. And that's when we first met. And then we found all these weird connections to each other.
Yeah, that sounds about right. We go way back, and I'll never forget playing Parsha and poker at your table
I was
many, many
gonna say, and
times.
then I got you to come to those parka and poshers, and those were a lot of fun. They really
Yeah,
it formed a strong community of people.
I know my Etrog vodka is still in my freezer from which I learned from you, so it's still
Yes,
ready to
that
go.
is still a yearly thing that I'm making also.
Yes,
I forgot that
anytime,
I taught you about that. Well,
anytime.
I'm thrilled that you're joining us on this episode of The Spark, and I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about um, your journey of Jewish communal work and really the multicultural work that you're doing in the world today. When did that start? When did that really that feeling of being part of a Jewish community and expanding outward become part of who you are?
For me, it started at Hillel at University of Florida. I started going to Friday night services, and from my USY days, they could tell that I could daven, and they quickly wrapped me into the leadership of the Friday night services. And I ended up leading for all 4 years that I was in, that I was at the university. I had always wanted to go to Israel, so I spent a year in Israel after college doing volunteer work around the country on a program called Otzma that
Mhm.
sadly no longer exists, but has been folded into things like Masa. And that started a 10-year career in the Jewish community, working for federations, for Hillel. And I moved here to Cleveland in 2007 after a year working for the Jewish community in St. Petersburg, Russia. Actually, I probably shouldn't skip that part,
No, I
but
remember
worked,
you doing that. Yeah.
yeah, worked for the Joint Distribution Committee 2005, 2000, no, 06, 07 in St. Petersburg. And then got an opportunity to work for the Jewish Federation of Cleveland. My wife Allison and I were ready to settle down and have kids, and we were looking around the country and said, Cleveland's as good a place as any, maybe the best place to raise kids if you want to have a wonderful Jewish community. And we gave it a shot. And I moved here in '07 and spent 2 years at Federation. But then the financial crisis of 2009 hit, and people were losing their jobs right and left, and I was one of them. The Federation contracted its staff by about a third. And I kind of was at a crossroads. What do I do next? And that will happen to you in life. One of the many things I've learned along this journey is sometimes you have to reinvent yourself. And I ended up going into the secular world, doing fundraising for various causes, but always something that spoke to my Jewish values, my neshama, the difference I wanted to make in the world. So I did a couple of years with a humanitarian aid agency.
That was
Um, I,
Medwish.
that was MedWish. I did a couple of years at a digital agency, but all of my clients were nonprofits, which was cool. And so I got to learn how to do digital marketing. And then the next big thing for me was in 2015, I joined a nonprofit here in town called Magnet. Magnet focuses on growing the manufacturing industry and the manufacturing workforce. And I knew nothing about manufacturing. Nice Jewish boy from Orlando, Florida. I don't think I'd even been in a factory ever in my career. It's one of the things that career awareness is a really important thing. I hope you guys are doing it at your school, but I just had no idea that these careers existed. But I kind of fell into this job and really fell in love with it. I fell in love with making things, fell in love with the career paths that allow people to move into the middle class through manufacturing careers. And I can talk endlessly about that because I'm still doing it here 11 years later, helping people get jobs in manufacturing. Um, and then through that, or along the way, I got very involved in all sorts of other causes around Cleveland, which I can dive into. But I've just had a really interesting career where different things have happened to me along the way. Definitely followed different paths, kind of a meandering career. But at the same time, I'm exactly where I want to be, which is making a difference in the world, helping people get jobs. Highest form of philanthropy per Maimonides, and
Sure.
so.
Teach a man to fish.
Exactly. So that's kind of been um, my calling card has been what can we do to get people jobs, and I can tell you more about those other opportunities right now.
How has that work informed your Jewish identity today, and how do you make sure that you and your family stay involved in the Jewish community as a whole?
Yeah. So we're very involved here in Beechwood, our suburb of Cleveland. My kids
You
go
live
to
across
Jewish.
the street from my aunt, actually.
Yep. My kids go to Jewish day school, the Mandel School. And you can find us at Shari Tikva most Saturday mornings.
With my
Um,
dad.
yes, exactly. Small world. But I think the way it's shaped my Jewish identity is that I've been in some of the worst neighborhoods of Cleveland. I've hung out with people who are incarcerated for long periods of time. And what that means is that I've seen how the other half lives. I've seen how many Americans don't have access to the privileges that particularly white Jews of middle class standing have access to. And it's definitely shaped how I see the world and how privileged I feel, how blessed I feel every day, and how that blessing leads to a responsibility to ensure that others have the same access, the same opportunities, both from a Jewish perspective and an American perspective. And so finding equity, building equality is something that doesn't just happen. It's something you have to work at every day. And I've been able to see that from my kind of 2 feet, one in the Jewish world, one in the secular world. I've seen that every day.
But you see it in more than just like the professional life, your professional work, because you're founding these organizations and these non-for-profits that are trying to bridge all of those things that you're talking about. Can you tell us about a couple of them? I mean, I know a couple of the things that you're doing. I'm sure there's a lot more that I don't even know, and some of the intricacies that it took to kick some of those things off.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2010, I became friends with a local chef who was running a restaurant in town. And one day he shared with me his vision of launching his own restaurant that trains formerly incarcerated people for careers in fine dining. That chef's name is Brandon Krastowski. And I loved the idea and thought, why don't we work together to launch it? So, as I mentioned, my career has been in fundraising and I helped him raise the money. We raised about $500,000. It took us about 3 years, but we launched in 2013. And Edwin's Restaurant and Leadership Institute has become the nation's flagship for training formerly incarcerated folks. Brandon won a James Beard Social Impact Award, which is really cool.
That's very
And
cool.
we've trained well over 600, probably over 700 now, people for careers in fine dining. And again, you take people where they are, you give them the skills to move up, you give them support along the way and a vision of themselves succeeding in the future. And those three elements really combine to lead to a great program.
What does
So,
that mean? What does that mean, support? How do you support
yeah,
them once they're in the field?
our first hire was a case manager. So someone, we knew how many issues the students were facing outside the classroom, and they can't perform in the classroom or in the restaurant if they don't have a place to sleep at night. They're facing all sorts of legal challenges. They might have low reading skills or addiction issues. And so our first hire was Heather, our case manager, who is still there to this day, which is amazing. And she's there 24/7 to help students with any issues that they're dealing. And then once they graduate, she's again on speed dial. And her whole job is to ensure that they have stability so that they don't return to prison. And the recidivism rate of Edwin's graduates is something like 2%. It's
Wow.
teeny tiny compared to the national average. So in 2015, I was working for this digital agency that I mentioned, and I saw how we didn't have any coders. And I felt like we could do something about that we really needed to train people with the basic skills of how to launch a website and how to JavaScript and other pieces of online education. And so I started throwing the idea around and sure enough, won a pitch competition. And that idea became Cleveland Codes, which is a software development boot camp, particularly for low income individuals to learn careers in software development. And I ended up giving that to our local community college, Tri-C, and Tri-C has run it ever since and has well over 250 graduates. Again, these are generally people coming from very low wage jobs, food service or hospitality, but they have a knack. They can see how to code. They have a particular way of seeing the world. And when they take the entrance exam, it's often the first exam that they ever get 100% on, that they like absolutely crush. And when you can see the world in a particular way, you have a really great potential for becoming a coder. And those people do amazing. They go from $15 an hour jobs to $25 an hour jobs, and all of a sudden they have again this career path and this pathway into the middle class, which is exciting. Um, and then to jump ahead a little bit, in 2020, I was continuing to work in inner city Cleveland, and it really bothered me that my Black friends didn't know my Jewish friends, and that I would literally be on a street corner on a Sunday and I'd see the Jewish community running a voter registration drive and the Black community running a voter registration drive on opposite sides of the street. And it just occurred to me there's so few resources, there's so little volunteer hours. We could really be much more efficient and effective if we work together, if our communities work together, especially because we share so many of the same values and so many of the same issues of hatred coming from the right and the left. And so I went to a Black friend of mine and said, hey, our communities need to stop working in parallel and start working in partnership. What do you think about starting a Black Jewish dialogue? And Charmaine Rice said to me, that's a great idea, but surely there's something in this community, sorry, in this country that we could bring to Cleveland. And, we should be able to just copy and paste something. And so I did the research, COVID hit, and I was stuck at home, didn't have much else to do. So I was researching what Black Jewish dialogues there were out there. And sadly, there really wasn't anything that was sustainable, meaningful, meant for adults. There were some great teen programs out there, but I wasn't interested in working with teens. And so I said to Charmaine, we're going to have to create this from the ground up. And she said, well, let's do it then. And let's make it free so any other community that wants it can do it as well. And that's where Rekindle came from. The idea of rekindling our partnership that was so effective and successful during the civil rights movement. And we put together a 15-hour curriculum. We started sharing it widely. Anybody who would email us out of the blue would get the curriculum and all our support to help make it happen in their cities. And that's when Margot reached out and brought it to Memphis.
But before Margot reached out,
sure.
how many you piloted this in Cleveland?
Yes.
And so let's talk a little bit about that infancy of the program.
Sure. We started in 2021 with just my friends and Charmaine's friends. We said, let's get everybody around a restaurant table. Actually, we met at Edwin's and said, let's see, does this work? And we got a lot of really good feedback and, dropped certain discussions, added new discussions, expanded the curriculum. 2022, we start getting a little bit of interest from other cities, but we weren't ready to share it. In 2023, we did start sharing it and had probably 5 cities running it by the end of that year. And then fast forward to today, here in Cleveland, we're in the midst of our 13th cohort. We have 180 alumni here in this city. And we are in 20 cities nationally and about 220-ish alumni outside of Cleveland. Eight cities are running as we speak, which is really exciting. So I now have 3 full-time staff members, which is also great. And this little idea that I had has become a real organization. I still have my full-time job in manufacturing workforce development, but I'm able to juggle all the balls and keep them all in the air. And it's been really rewarding and fulfilling.
Yeah, so Rekindle launched, I think, just about a year ago here in Memphis. We're on cohort 3 now. And I remember talking to you when they started it and told you how excited I was that they were bringing it here to Memphis. And yeah, Margot Gruen, who has been involved in our school for a long time and involved in the Memphis Jewish community, she saw it somewhere and thought it was just such a great thing that she's the one who really wanted to bring it here to town. And so I'm excited that I'm in the cohort now. And, I always get a little chuckle as I'm looking at the source book that we have and then the study sheets for each thing. And then on the bottom, it says for questions and it has your name and email on the bottom. I'm like, I know him. I know.
Yes.
It's a pretty cool thing. I'm finding the conversations to really be very, very rich. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I struggle with, and maybe you can talk about this a little bit, is that, for me as a Jew and as a religious Jew, I'm walking around and I wear my kippah when I walk around, no matter where I am. But there are times that I'll put a baseball hat on, right? Mm-hmm. And it's easy for me to be worried about walking somewhere. And so I'll just put my baseball hat on. And I said this to the other people who are in my cohort. I said, but you, a Black person living in America today, you can't put a baseball hat on and hide your Blackness. And it's very different because while my race is white, I'm Jewish and that's my religion. And it kind of separates things a little bit. And so I'm wondering your take on that and your thoughts on why it's not just a Black-white dialogue, why specifically a Jewish and Black person dialogue.
Absolutely. So yeah, we really focus on this interfaith dialogue, although the race thing is important too. And it's really important to acknowledge that not all Jews are white, and we love Black Jews and encourage them to be.
And not all Black people are people of faith.
That's true. That's true. And the Black diaspora is enormous. I mean, we think we're diverse as Jews. We have Nigerians and Caribbeans and all sorts of other folks in the same room. People, everything from agnostic to all sorts of Christians to all sorts of African religions and others. We've had Black Muslims here in Cleveland. You name it. So it's two very diverse communities coming together, and I love that. And what very quickly gets stripped away, and hopefully you'll see this in your cohort, is at the end of the day, we're just people, and we have our different perspectives, we have our different worldviews, but it's so important to just say, at the end, we have the same worries about our kids, the same worries about our world, the same hopes and aspirations, and so let's focus on where we align, and we don't have to always focus on where we disagree because chances are it's less than 10% of the overall issues. But you're exactly right. White Jews in this country can pass and can get into spaces that Black folks often can't. We're not pulled over by the cops at anywhere near the ratio of Black folks, and on and on and on. You'd have to be blind to not see the data tells the story of the plight of Black people in this country and how great it's been for Jews. And I feel like we, as Jews who have made it and moved up in the world, have an obligation to pull others up with us and to share our success with others. And so, yes, it happens all the time where, in fact, that's really intentional in that first meeting where you talk about, are Jews white? And we have this card, this white card that we can play at certain times. We don't have to. We don't have to come out and be Jewish all the time if we want to hide it. But Black folks can never escape that card, and so it's a very important distinction, and it's a tension. Our Jews and whiteness in this country, because we don't have the same history as a white Protestant that came over, with the Mayflower. White Jews came escaping the Holocaust and escaping pogroms, and this country, thankfully, was very welcoming to us, and so this is the place to have those conversations, and that's, I think, what's so important is. You're not going to have any success having these conversations online, right? You can just get screenshotted and canceled and blamed and whatever. And even in person, these conversations can be really tough because you need to create a space for it. So here is that space. Here's 3 hours every other Sunday for 10, 12 weeks where you can ask the questions that are on your heart. You won't get canceled. You'll get educated, and you'll walk away feeling like, wow, I see the world a different way now because of that conversation.
And you build a relationship, which to me, just in 2 sessions, is really a very special part of the whole thing. I love the idea of trying to get together with somebody in between sessions, even just for a cup of coffee. And I've found that to be so meaningful to really personally get to know people and understand where they're coming from and some of the differences, but more of the similarities actually, which is a really nice thing. How have you seen?
Let's talk about Rise projects. What are
Yeah.
you thinking about? So Rise projects are a Rekindle intercultural sharing and exchange. The idea is like adult field trips where you're opening up your home or opening up your church or a chance to get to know people and what makes them tick outside the workshop. So tell me what you're doing for yours.
So we just came together this past Sunday and found out who our Rise groups were and what we wanted to do together. I'm going to invite everybody and their spouse or their significant other over for a Shabbat dinner at our house. I think that seeing how, as a traditionally Orthodox Jew, I practice Shabbat and the day of rest the way that I do, I think will be really interesting for people to be able to see. One of the members is thinking of having us over to their church to understand how their church runs. One of the members is thinking of doing a movie night, and that movie Sinners, which the Oscar won quite a few awards. She wants to do a movie night and have us watch that together and really be able to dissect it and talk about it. So there's some interesting ideas. Some of the other groups had some really interesting ideas also. There's a play that's playing at one of the theaters here. It's Ma Rainey and the Blues or something along those lines. And so their group talked about all of them going, but then she said, but we'll open it up to anybody else from the other Rise groups within our cohort. So it's very nice to be able to figure out how to do those things in a very meaningful way. You're 13 cohorts in now, and I'm wondering how you've seen the needle in the Cleveland community shifted as a result of the program. What are you noticing? Are you seeing any differences? And what's still to come to strengthen that Black Jewish dialogue and relationship?
Yeah. So what most people respond to me and tell me about is the friend or two that they walk away with that will be a friend for life. And they send me selfies from their coffees or from their Shabbat tables or from their seders or whatever it might be. And that's really wonderful. Some have said because of Rekindle, I started an internship program at my business for Black youth, or I joined a literacy program, or I joined the board of a nonprofit because of what I learned and what I experienced. And so that's really powerful. So people are making these small anecdotal changes to their lives, and that's been great. What's next is to figure out how we turn those good feelings into systemic change and move from stories to systems. And what can we do to solidify a lot of the gains and changes that are made. And so we're working on that. We have a volunteering day coming up in April for Good Deeds Day. We're going to go volunteer together, and we need to figure it out. It's the hard part, right? You go back, you finish the fellowship, and you go back to your family and your job, and it's awfully hard to keep that momentum going. But we going to figure it out. We just continue to iterate. And I'll just to back up, the Rise projects are a really good example of hitting challenges and then keep trying new things until it works, because we tried action projects during the curriculum in several different ways, cohorts 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through. We kept trying, what can we do to take action? How can we layer action into the dialogue, into the fellowship? And we figured out at the end, it doesn't work. You actually need to start with the dialogue and the relationships, and then you can move to action. So the Rise projects are a way of taking action, but to really double down on those relationships. And so it's a good example of just being flexible and resilient and saying, I know I'm onto something, but I'm not doing it right yet. So we just kept iterating, and we keep trying new things. The cultural object sharing that you did in your last
Yeah,
session was also a new thing, a way of diving deep.
fascinating. I love that piece.
Wasn't that
Yeah.
really cool? What'd you bring?
So I actually have my paternal grandfather and great grandfather's sets of tefillin. I have all three
Hmm.
sets, and I
Hmm.
brought them in and talked about why they're so meaningful, what's contained inside them, and it was important for me to show that those are things that had come to America from Europe and have been
Yeah,
passed down generation to generation, and they were things that were so meaningful that I wanted to be able to bring them into my house and show my children and show my community and have with me all the time.
that's wonderful. The Jews tend to bring items of Judaica,
Yeah,
and often we'll talk about Hidur mitzvah, making a mitzvah beautiful and what it means, and the Black folks will generally bring things from their families, but having nothing to do with religion,
yeah, I noticed that.
because
Yeah.
yeah, it's they don't have the deep religious ties that we do, but they have the cultural pieces and
Mhm.
family heirlooms. And so you see that, and it's a really interesting distinction. It really makes the history pop for you. We can look at us, we can afford these pretty menorahs and tallits and whatnot. And look at this on the Black side, it's like, here's a skillet, here's a Bible. Like, this is all we had. So we just pass it down generation to generation. And
Somebody
it's a really
brought
important learning.
the jacket that her father wore when he was a cotton picker in the
Oh,
South,
wow.
because we're
Wow.
in the South, and like then passed it around for all of us to touch and feel and see the rips and the oil stains and things like that. And it was so powerful, so
Yeah.
powerful.
I'll also mention that, you and I have been to Israel many, many times. A lot of your students will have been or will go many, many times over the course of their lives. For many Black folks, going to Africa is a once in a lifetime
Yeah.
pilgrimage. And so they'll bring, African statues or
Mhm.
African things that they brought back. And that's the only time they'll ever go. And, and even such, that's not really their homeland. And it's tough for them to
Right.
often integrate. And so, we're so lucky to have Israel. And some of these conversations really bring that up, where the Black folks are like, all I got is America. You guys have Israel. Like, and so you really you end up appreciating your Judaism in a whole new way when you're with people who have other faiths or no faith at all,
Yeah.
and how they see you really makes you appreciate your life a little bit
Yeah,
differently.
it's really been fascinating, and I'm so thrilled to be part of the program now. You talked earlier a little bit about Edwin's and the work that you did there, and I'm wondering, Rekindle started as something just in Cleveland. Is the model of what you did at Edwin's, is that something that you're hoping is replicated in other cities as well?
So Edmunds goes deeper into Cleveland and opens new businesses all the time, but has not really scaled outside of Cleveland. What we have done is consulted for other businesses that have started. I'm really proud of the work that we did to help All Square in Minneapolis get off the ground. I got to know the founder and CEO when she came and visited Edwin's to learn about how to do it, and then she's been around for probably 10 years now as well. So Edwin serves as a model and consults, but has not opened any sites outside of Cleveland. Officially, where we've done lots and lots of consulting, even deep, even operations for other organizations to help to get them off the ground. But what we do have now is an event space, bakery, butcher shop. We just signed a lease to open a fish restaurant, fish, not a restaurant, fish store, grocery store sort of thing. We have housing for our students. So what Brandon has done has been amazing. And so I think the lesson there is that I was very happy to play second fiddle, to be the behind the scenes guy and do what I'm good at, which is grant writing, and just make Brandon successful. And so, the lesson there is you don't always have to be in front of you don't always have to be the one on the podcast. You don't always have to be the one telling the story. Sometimes being a follower is just as important as being a leader. And I have loved being a follower of Brandon's through this journey, and being able to support him has been really incredible.
But to your credit, I mean, take a little credit. It's okay. I mean, here you have your hands in so many different things, and it takes one person to change the world, right? But it takes
Mhm.
everybody else to follow them and listen and to be part of it.
Mhm.
Um, you clearly are thinking in a variety of different ways and doing a variety of different things. And I know that you've had some honors and some recognition for those things. Do you want to talk a little bit about those? I know it's always hard to like share those things,
Um,
but
I'll mention a few that I'm proud of. One was the Shine a Light Award from the Jewish Education Project, and while it shined a light on Charmaine and I and our work putting together Rekindle and our work fighting hate through Rekindle, I mean, I think you can really fight hate by working with the people in the middle who want to engage and empowering them to go to their friends who are on the far right or the far left and say, that's not the way the world really works. I know Jews, I know Black folks, they're not like that. So I really appreciated that, mostly because it brought a spotlight on Rekindle and allowed us to get the word out about the work that we're doing and the work that we're doing to change the narrative about Blacks and Jews not getting along and really say, no, absolutely we do, and here's a model for how we can do it better. So that one was really fun. Another one that I won that was just a blast was in 2015, I was selected as the USY Danny Siegel change maker in residence. And for those of us who know Danny Siegel, he has been an amazing change
Mr.
maker to have.
Tzedakah for USY, yeah.
Exactly. So to have his name associated with mine was a real honor. And I got to go around and tell the Edwin story at Ramah and other kind of camps around the country. And it was just an absolute blast. And I will forever be thankful for that opportunity. So certainly don't do it for the recognition, but I love the recognition because it brings more eyeballs
Yeah.
onto the work that we're doing and allows people like Margot to find out about this and bring it to their cities. So our chapter in Hartford, Connecticut is run by volunteers as well. And I keep saying, like, if volunteers can do this, then anyone can do this. And so when I'm talking to a JCRC of a federation or an ADL chapter, any of the alphabet soup of Jewish organizations around the country, I can point to and say, it's being done. We're here to support you. This isn't, lo b'shamayim hi, right? It's not outside your grasp. It's right here. You can make this happen. And if Black folks and Jewish folks can ally, we can be extremely powerful in fighting for our democracy and fighting for civil rights and in making America this great American experiment that's been so good to the Jewish people to continue it and make it good for everybody.
So as a parent, I'm going to ask you a parent question now.
Mhm.
Because I feel like so much of what we do as parents are to try and inspire our kids and give them a positive lesson. How are your kids carrying the message that you and Allison are giving them to go out into the community and to do things and to um, be responsible, great human beings?
Hmm. I mean, I see it in their report cards, which is great. Their little mentions, which is great. They consistently are helping their friends and acting as role models. Eliana's looking at colleges now, and she wants to go into psychology and help fight the loneliness epidemic amongst her peers.
That's
As a
great.
kid of COVID, she felt it firsthand, and she thinks whatever she can do to help teen mental health would be really powerful. So I'm excited about that. Leora is involved here in Cleveland in testimony theater, where they take on stories of local Holocaust survivors or
Mhm.
people, related to Holocaust survivors, and they dramatize them and put them on stage. And so that's a great way. Actually, one of our Rise projects is one of the 20 somethings in the cohort is having her grandmother speak about what it was to
Wow.
survive Auschwitz. So
Wow.
that's pretty cool, and what a unique opportunity. And Arya is just a good little kid, and that's a great thing, and he's really worldly. So they see the actions that Allison and my wife Allison and I take out in the world, and I think what's really important is we talk about it at the dinner table, we talk about it at the Shabbat table. Um, those are not places to be bashful or reticent about sharing the work that you're doing in the world and the values that you're living. And so they understand why we're not home many nights, and they understand, why this Sunday morning Dad's out because he has to run a Rekindle meeting. But that's the difference that we want to make in the world, and I hope that they're seeing that and thinking, "Oh, well, what's the difference I'm going to make in the world?" And those are the conversations that we really want them to be thinking through.
I think it's pretty awesome the things that you're doing and the wherewithal that you have to reach out to the broader community and to bring us together. We are one people and we need to find a way to be able to work for the same goals. And it's really it's awesome the things that you're doing and I never would have imagined when we had dinner at your house that night that that was the path that you were going to take. And it kind of shows you that you never know where you're going to go and what you're going to do. But um what you've done is now not just something that's impacting Cleveland. I hope that you're able to see how it's really impacting our country and the things that are happening all over the country today.
Yeah, yeah, I am. I get to see the pictures and it makes me really happy, and it's very, very fulfilling and rewarding. But mostly I do it because I love the conversations in the room here in Cleveland, and I learn something new every time. And the people are so excited to open up and excited to have the space to ask the
Yeah.
questions that are on their hearts, and commiserate about the pain and the suffering they see in the world. And there's a human need, I think that's one of the things that I would mention is just there's a human need for connection, and we just happen to be in the right place at the right time, offering Jews and Black folks a place to connect on a human level. I wish that was available to other folks. I think we would have a better world if everybody had that same space. And so, I started with the communities that I know best, but I'm excited to see where it goes, and would love to see this model adapted for teens, for college students. We actually are piloting this on Case Western's campus in partnership with Hillel there, to see if we can do it, rekindle on campus. And maybe there's Hispanic Jewish or Asian Jewish dialogue that we can spur through this. So hopefully we've built a model that others can use, and we love to share it.
Well, it's awesome. I'm thrilled to be part of it and look forward to seeing you next time we're in Cleveland.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
please give my father a hug when you see him on Shabbat.
We'll do. We'll do.
And it's great to talk to you and to catch up. Please give Allison and the kids my best. I saw your daughter in Israel on the Israel trip a couple of years ago. I think I
Yeah.
took a picture and sent it to you. And she's
Yeah.
like, "Who is this weird guy who wants to take a picture with me?"
It's been fun getting old together. It's fun. It's a fun process, a fun journey. But kol hakavod to you on all the work that you're doing and the amazing podcast and all that good stuff. So I can't wait to hear at the end of your Rekindle experience what you're thinking of and where you go
Absolutely.
next.
I'll reach out.
Please do.
All right. Thank you so much. Great to see
Thanks,
you.
Dan. Yeah, absolutely.